Hi, it is I, your creative writing teacher. How are you? I wanted to talk to you for just a second about poetry. We are making the transition this week from fiction to poetry. There are several reasons for this. The first is that is what our curriculum requires us to do. We have to address both genres in this introductory class. But the primary reason for this is that poetry provides an amazing foundation for writing in any genre. So a lot of people, I think, are afraid of poetry. They think they don't understand it. They think it's too esoteric, too sappy, too hard, too whatever. I think a lot of people just were not taught about poetry in a way that was very effective. A lot of people end up in classrooms where they were forced to come up with a particular meaning for a piece of writing, or they were forced into these little boxes with syllables and line counts and line breaks and things like that that were very rigid and unforgiving. And when you're first approaching a genre, that may not be the most effective way to get people to fall in love with that genre. Now, forms are fabulous. There's nothing wrong with forms. There's nothing wrong with working with sonnets, with haikus, with all different sorts of pantoums, all kinds of that are out there in the world of poetry. But we're not going to do it at this introductory level. At this introductory level, we're just working with skills that transcend everything. So the things we're learning in fiction and the things that we're learning in poetry work together. And they will make you a better writer regardless of what genre you ultimately prefer to work in. We're not going to work with rhyming poetry. It's too difficult to do well. What happens is that people will try to find the word that rhymes rather than the word that provides the strongest image or the strongest experience for the reader. Just like with fiction, poetry is an experience for the reader. It's a window. It's a very small, usually a very small, but not always, because we have narrative poetry as well that tells an entire story. But it's one of the reasons to teach it at this level is to force you guys to slow down. The world moves very quickly. We skim things on the internet. We skim probably our textbooks, although I don't want to know that. We skim and move from one thing to the other, and did I get something? Okay, fine, I'm going to move to the next thing. And poetry makes us stop and really look, and really listen, and really experience something. And those are skills that you need as a writer. Again, regardless of what your preferred form is. Slow down, stop, pay attention, and then bring to light something that the rest of the world is missing from that experience. Don't be afraid of poetry. Don't be afraid of what it is or what it isn't or what you think it's supposed to be. It's language, and it's a page, a piece of paper. It's words on a piece of paper. And then those words evoke something. This is what occurs in fiction too. Poetry requires you to distill down something that's very important for the fiction writer who rambles and rambles and rambles. And when I say, oh, you should cut out about 15 of those pages, they're like, no, every word is important. And I'm like, no, you just think it is. Slow down, look, notice, observe, bring back to the page. So poetry writing also teaches specificity. So we don't write about love and loss and anger and jealousy and sadness and betrayal. We show love, loss, anger, betrayal, jealousy. This translates to fiction also. Emotion words, like the ones I just named, have no meaning, none, for a reader. The image that you bring to demonstrate those emotions has the power. And then the final thing that poetry really helps us learn is specificity. Choosing every word carefully. Choosing the right word, not the close enough word. Choosing strong nouns and strong verbs, not just dropping adjective upon adjective upon adjective to try to do something better. The right noun and the right verb do just about everything you ever need in a piece of writing. So these are some of the things that poetry is going to help you do. Please don't have preconceptions. Please don't have prejudgments. And please don't be afraid. Everybody is learning. I'm still learning. 20 some odd years of doing this and writing and practicing and teaching. There's always something to learn about anything you read and anything you write if you approach it with an open heart. So I want to close with this poem by Billy Collins. And Billy Collins was the United States Poet Laureate quite a few years ago. And he did a lot of work bringing poetry into the schools and helping to kind of demystify poetry for the country and for our kids at school. So this poem is called Introduction to Poetry, and it's one of my favorites for teaching. Here's how it goes. I ask them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with a rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. And I think that this is representative of a lot of people's experience with poetry in grade school and high school. What does it mean? What does it mean? Isn't this author so smart? Look at this. You're never going to be smart enough to figure this out. Blah, 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 blah. And that's just not what poetry is. Poetry is alive. Poetry is an expression of the world. So slow down. When you read our book for this particular section, take your time with it. Take your time on the poems. You have to learn how to read poetry, but it's not some big mystery. It's not some big thing that requires you to be a super secret special genius. It just requires you to slow down, pay attention, ask questions, and be open to wonder. Enjoy our final half of the semester. It is well worth your time.